Crixville stood at the front of the recruitment hall, his forearms spread wide as he addressed the crowd of young Velothi males. The holographic display behind him showed glorious images of Velothi warriors marching through conquered cities. Triumphant music played through the speakers. The propaganda was perfect in every way. "Join the hegemony forces today," Crixville announced with practiced enthusiasm. "Serve your species. Bring glory to your family name. The war against the lesser species will be swift and victorious." The young Velothi in the audience clicked their mandibles with excitement. They had grown up watching recruitment videos. They had seen the strength of the hegemony. 300 species united under one banner. The largest military force the galaxy had ever known. How could they possibly lose? Torvax was one of the eager young males in the crowd. He was barely past his molting age, his exoskeleton still soft in places. But he dreamed of glory. He dreamed of returning to his home world as a decorated soldier. His father had served. His grandfather had served. Now it was his turn. He signed his name on the enlistment form that same day. The training camp was located on a dusty moon far from any major population center. Torvax arrived with 3,000 other recruits. They were given standard hegemony armor and weapons. They were taught to march in formation. They were shown how to fire plasma rifles at stationary targets. The instructors told them they were the finest soldiers in the galaxy. They told them the enemies of the hegemony would fall before their might. Every morning, they watched propaganda videos of past victories. Every night, they sang songs of glory. Torvax believed every word. 6 standard months passed. Torvax and his fellow recruits completed their basic training. They were assigned to the 47th Combined Infantry Division. Their commanding officer was a grizzled Velothi veteran named Commander Drethix. He had fought in 12 campaigns across the galaxy. The day their deployment orders arrived, Torvax noticed something strange. Commander Drethix's hands were shaking as he read the datapad. His compound eyes seemed to lose their usual shine. For a moment, the veteran looked afraid. "Where are we being deployed, Commander?" asked one of the recruits. Drethix was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "The Orion sector. We are being sent to reinforce hegemony positions on the planet Kethro 7. The recruits murmured with excitement. Finally, real combat. Finally, a chance to prove themselves. But Drethix raised one of his arms for silence. "There is something you need to know. Something the recruitment officers did not tell you." The room grew quiet. "On Kethro 7, we will be facing Terran Marines." Torvax did not understand why the color drained from the faces of the more experienced soldiers in the room. He had heard of Terrans, of course. They were one of the younger species in the galaxy. They came from a small blue planet on the outer edge of the galactic arm. They had only achieved faster than light travel 200 years ago. "What is so special about Terrans?" Torvax asked. Commander Drethix looked at him with something that might have been pity. "You will learn soon enough." The troop transport took 3 weeks to reach Kethro 7. During that time, Torvax began to notice strange things. The veteran soldiers on board the ship grew quieter with each passing day. Some of them spent hours staring at nothing. Others could be heard crying in their bunks at night. One evening, Torvax approached an older soldier named Venik. The veteran had served for 20 years. He had fought on dozens of worlds. "Tell me about the Terrans," Torvax said. Venik's mandibles clicked nervously. He looked around to make sure no officers were listening. "They are not like other species," Venik said quietly. "They do not follow the rules of warfare that the rest of the galaxy accepts. They do not surrender when they are outnumbered. They do not retreat when they are outgunned." "That sounds foolish," Torvax said. Venik shook his head. "You do not understand. In my first battle against them, my unit outnumbered the Terrans 10 to 1. We had superior weapons. We had air support. We had every advantage. What happened? We lost. We lost badly. The Terrans came at us through a storm of plasma fire. They just kept coming. Some of them were burning. Some of them were missing limbs. But they kept coming. And when they reached our lines, Venek stopped talking. His entire body was trembling. What happened when they reached your lines? Torvax pressed. They fight with their hands, Venek whispered. With their teeth, with rocks and broken weapons. They do not stop until their hearts stop beating. Even then, some of them still try to fight. Torvax did not believe it. It sounded like the exaggerated stories soldiers told to scare recruits. The transport landed on Kethra 7 3 days later. The planet was a hellish landscape of volcanic rock and poisonous atmosphere. The hegemony forces had established a series of fortified bases across the northern continent. The Terrans controlled the south. Torvax and his unit were assigned to Forward Base 17. It was positioned at the edge of contested territory. The base was surrounded by defensive walls, automated turrets, and minefields. It should have been impenetrable. On his first night at the base, Torvax heard something strange. It was a sound coming from the darkness beyond the walls. It took him a moment to recognize what it was. Singing. The Terrans were singing. Why did they do that? Torvax asked a nearby soldier. Psychological warfare, the soldier replied. They want us to know they are out there. They want us to be afraid. Torvax tried to sleep that night. He could not. The attack came 3 days later. Torvax was eating his morning rations when the alarms started screaming. He grabbed his plasma rifle and ran to his assigned position on the western wall. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Terrans came out of the morning mist like demons from an old nightmare. They wore heavy armor painted in colors that shifted and changed with the landscape. Their faces were hidden behind helmets that showed no mercy, no fear, no emotion at all. There were only 50 of them. The base had 800 defenders. "Open fire!" Commander Drethik screamed. The defenders unleashed a storm of plasma fire. The ground in front of the base erupted in flames and explosions. Nothing could survive such a barrage. But the Terrans survived. They ran through the fire. They did not slow down. They did not take cover. They just ran straight toward the walls, firing their weapons with deadly accuracy. Torvax watched in horror as the soldiers around him fell one by one. Every shot the Terrans fired seemed to find its target. Meanwhile, the plasma bolts seemed to pass harmlessly around the advancing humans. One Terran took a direct hit to the chest. The plasma burned through his armor and into his flesh. Torvax saw smoke rising from the wound. The Terran kept running. He did not even stumble. "What are they?" Torvax screamed. No one answered. They were all too busy dying. The Terrans reached the wall in less than 2 minutes. They did not bother with the gates. They simply planted explosive charges and blew holes in the fortifications. Then they poured through, firing their weapons in controlled bursts. Torvax tried to fight back. He fired his plasma rifle at a Terran who was climbing through the breach. The shot hit the human in the shoulder. The Terran turned and looked at him. For a moment, their eyes met through the human's visor. Torvax saw no hatred in those eyes, no anger, no fear, just cold, calculated purpose. Then the Terran raised his weapon and fired. Torvax woke up in a medical transport. His chest was bandaged. His left arm was missing below the elbow. A medical drone hovered over him, dispensing painkillers into his bloodstream. What happened? He croaked. A nurse appeared beside him. Her compound eyes were filled with tears. "The base fell," she said. "You are one of the lucky ones. Only 47 survivors out of 800. Torvax closed his eyes. He remembered the recruitment hall. He remembered the glorious images on the holographic display. He remembered the triumphant music. It had all been lies. 6 months later, Torvax returned to his home world. He was missing an arm and 3 of his legs. His exoskeleton was scarred and pitted from plasma burns. He walked with a mechanical brace that clicked and whirred with each step. The recruitment hall was still there. A new speaker stood at the front. addressing a new crowd of young males. The holographic display still showed glorious images. The triumphant music still played. Torvax walked into the hall. The speaker stopped mid-sentence. "You," Torvax said, pointing at the speaker. "Tell them the truth. Tell them about Kethros 7. Tell them about the Terran Marines." The speaker's mandibles clicked nervously. "Sir, you are disrupting an official hegemony function. I must ask you to leave." Torvax ignored him. He turned to face the crowd of young recruits. "I joined the hegemony forces because I believed the propaganda," Torvax said. "I believed we were the greatest military force in the galaxy. I believed victory was certain." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Then I met the Terran Marines." The room was silent. "They are not like us," Torvax continued. "They come from a death world, a planet so hostile that it has been trying to kill them since the day their species evolved. They have been fighting for survival for millions of years. War is in their blood. Violence is in their souls." One of the recruits raised a hand. "But surely we can defeat them. We have superior numbers." "Superior technology," Torvax laughed. It was not a happy sound. "I watched 50 Terran Marines destroy a base defended by 800 of our best soldiers. I watched them walk through plasma fire like it was rain. I watched them take wounds that would kill any other species and keep fighting." He leaned forward, his mechanical brace clicking against the floor. "You want to know the worst part? Those 50 Marines were a distraction. While we were fighting them, a single Terran sniper team infiltrated our base and assassinated our command staff. We never even saw them." The recruitment speaker tried to regain control. "This is just one soldier's experience. The hegemony is winning the war. We are not winning," Torvax said flatly. "We have lost every major engagement with the Terrans for the past 3 years. The hegemony command is hiding the truth because they are afraid. They are afraid that if the people knew the truth, no one would enlist." He turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, he paused and looked back at the young recruits. "If you have any sense, you will walk out of this hall and never return. The war against the Terrans cannot be won. It can only be survived." Torvax left the hall. Behind him, he heard the sound of chairs scraping against the floor. He heard footsteps following him. When he looked back, half the recruits had left their seats. They walked past the stunned recruitment speaker and out into the daylight. Torvax smiled for the first time in months. The truth was finally spreading. And once enough people learned the truth, even the hegemony would have to listen. The war would not end with victory. It would end with understanding, with negotiation, with peace. Because there was no shame in accepting that some enemies could not be defeated. There was only wisdom. And perhaps, one day, the Terrans would teach them what it meant to be truly alive.